What if everything you thought you knew about the royal family was about to change in an instant? What if two young children, barely old enough to understand the world around them, had their very identities stripped away by a single decision? Imagine being Archie Harrison or Lilibet Diana, walking into a room one morning and learning that your titles, your very names, the legacy that connects you to centuries of history, have been erased. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, that morning wasn't a hypothetical scenario. It was reality, and the shockwave it sent through their lives, the palace corridors, and the world at large is only just beginning to ripple outward. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It started like any ordinary day at Kensington Palace, but in reality, nothing could have been more extraordinary. Reports emerged that Prince William, the elder brother and heir apparent to the British throne, had made an unprecedented decision. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, the children of Harry and Meghan, would no longer carry the titles of prince and princess. The announcement, delivered through official channels, was concise, yet its impact was anything but. This wasn't just about etiquette, tradition, or public image. This was about legacy, hierarchy, and control over the future of the monarchy itself. Harry reportedly received the news in a flurry of confusion and disbelief. Meghan, ever poised yet fiercely protective, was said to be both incredulous and incensed. According to insiders, the couple's first reactions were raw and unfiltered, private conversations filled with shock, frustration, and a sense of betrayal that only close family conflicts can evoke. This wasn't merely a royal decision, it was personal. Every palace insider, every advisor, every distant cousin watching from the sidelines knew that the ramifications of this move would not just ripple through the family, they would reverberate across the globe. You might be wondering, why now? Why would Prince William take such a drastic step? And why at this precise moment? The timing, sources say, was calculated, meticulous, almost surgical, and the world would only learn part of the story. There were whispers in the halls of Buckingham Palace, hushed conversations over tea, and strategically leaked information to the media. Every action, every reaction, was carefully choreographed to send a message, not just to Harry and Meghan, but to the public. The message was clear: titles are not guaranteed. Even the youngest members of the royal family are subject to scrutiny, judgment, and, ultimately, control by the reigning lineage. But this isn't just about titles. It's about identity. For Archie and Lilibet, being a prince or princess is more than a social designation. It's part of who they are. It's their name, their position in history, the connection to ancestors who shaped a nation. Stripping them of that recognition does more than alter their public perception. It reshapes the narrative of their childhood, the trajectory of their upbringing, and the emotional landscape of their parents' lives. Can you imagine, as a child, suddenly being told that who you are, officially, is no longer recognized? It's a seismic shift in reality. The public reaction was instantaneous. Social media exploded with disbelief, outrage, and speculation. Every news outlet from London to Los Angeles ran headlines emphasizing the unprecedented nature of the move. Was this sibling rivalry? Was it a preemptive measure to protect the integrity of the monarchy? Or was there something deeper, a strategic maneuver designed to assert control over a family that has, in recent years, often defied expectations and norms? Theories ran rampant, and every new leak seemed to fan the flames of a story that had already captivated the world. And what of the children themselves? Sources suggest that Harry and Meghan were acutely aware of the emotional toll this would take on Archie and Lilibet. For Meghan, in particular, her protective instincts were reportedly in overdrive. She is said to have spent hours in private meetings, discussing ways to buffer her children from the media storm, the public scrutiny, and the emotional weight of a decision that no child should ever have to comprehend at their age. Harry, for his part, was torn between defending his children and maintaining whatever fragile relationship remained with his brother. According to insiders, the calls, the texts, the messages exchanged in those first chaotic hours were filled with tension, desperation, and a sense of helplessness that only parents facing unprecedented family conflict can feel. Behind the scenes, palace insiders suggest that William's decision was not sudden. There were months of deliberation, advice from senior officials, and careful consideration of how this move would be received publicly. Yet, despite the careful planning, the personal cost was enormous. Friends close to Harry and Meghan described the couple as devastated, navigating a mix of grief, anger, and a need to protect their children from a world suddenly turned hostile. The palace, for its part, maintained a calm public front, issuing statements that emphasized continuity, tradition, and duty, but insiders say these statements only scratched the surface of the tension simmering behind the palace walls. And this is where the story deepens, because while the official narrative is simple, the undercurrents are anything but. There are whispers of sibling rivalry that stretch back decades, of unspoken resentments, of long-standing grievances that suddenly found expression in the most public and impactful way possible. The stripping of titles is more than a bureaucratic decision. It's a statement, a message, a recalibration of the family dynamic that has implications for generations to come. Yet, even with all of this, the world is only beginning to understand the full implications. What happens when the titles are removed, but the familial bonds remain? How do children, raised with royal expectations and public attention, navigate a sudden shift in identity? How do parents reconcile love, loyalty, and protection with the complex machinery of monarchy, public perception, and historical precedent? These questions, though unanswered, hang over the story like a storm cloud ready to break. And while Harry and Meghan grapple with their shock and the world debates the implications, there is one lingering question that haunts the narrative. What comes next? The palace has made its move, the media has reacted, and the public has weighed in. But the ripple effects of this decision, the private confrontations, the emotional reckonings yet to occur, remain hidden. There are calls that have not been returned, meetings that have yet to take place, and a series of revelations that insiders suggest could dramatically shift the narrative once again. So, what exactly drove Prince William to take such an unprecedented step? Was it a protective measure, an assertion of authority, or something far more calculated? And how will Harry and Meghan respond? Not just as public figures, but as parents watching their children's identities shift in real time. The answers, sources say, are more shocking than the initial announcement itself. And then there's the public lens. Already, online discussions have turned into debates, hashtags are trending, and YouTube commentators are dissecting every possible angle. Some argue that William acted in the interest of monarchy stability, while others see a family feud spilling into public view in a way that could damage the institution irreparably. The world is watching, and every word, every gesture, every leaked statement matters. By now, the scene is set. Archie and Lilibet have lost their titles, Harry and Meghan are reeling, the media is aflame, and the public is captivated. But this is only the beginning. The layers of family tension, palace politics, and emotional complexity have only just begun to unravel. Behind every headline, there is a story untold, a secret conversation, a strategic maneuver, a deeply personal reaction that will shape the trajectory of the royal family for years to come. And so we ask you, what would you do if the world suddenly told you who you were not allowed to be? How would you protect your children, navigate a sibling feud, and maintain a public image under scrutiny from millions? These are the questions Harry and Meghan are facing right now, in real time, and the answers may shock you. Imagine receiving a letter that instantly changes the future of your children. No warning, no discussion, just a statement of fact that the titles your children were born with, titles that link them to centuries of history, are gone. That is what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reportedly faced in the hours following Prince William's unprecedented decree. But how could a single decision carry such weight? And why would William, the elder brother, take a step so severe against his own nephews and niece? The decree, sources say, was drafted with precision, leaving no room for negotiation. Officially, it was a statement of royal protocol, emphasizing the continuity and dignity of the monarchy. Unofficially, it was a bombshell detonating through the private lives of Harry, Meghan, and their children. Every word in that letter was calculated, every phrasing choice deliberate. The palace, insiders claim, wanted to make a statement, one that would be heard not just in London, but around the world. According to palace insiders, the letter arrived late in the morning. Harry, reading it, is said to have sat in stunned silence, the words echoing in his mind. Meghan, learning of the decree moments later, reportedly felt a rush of anger mixed with disbelief. How could this happen without prior discussion? Without a single conversation warning them of the impending action? The couple had anticipated disagreements with William, sure, but nothing that would reach this magnitude. Nothing that would strip their children of their identities so publicly, so decisively. But what exactly did the decree say? According to sources who have reviewed portions of the text, the statement began with formal language, stressing the importance of maintaining the royal lineage and upholding centuries-old traditions. It cited precedent, historical examples, and the role of monarchy in modern society. And then, in the middle of these carefully crafted sentences, came the undeniable truth. Archie, Harrison, and Lilibet Diana would no longer hold the titles of prince and princess. The language was clinical, almost cold. There was no empathy, no acknowledgement of the emotional impact on the children or their parents. It was as if the writers intended to make the message feel final and unchallengeable. Harry, according to insiders, felt that sting immediately. This wasn't just a bureaucratic adjustment. It was a declaration, and it came with consequences that would ripple through the family for years to come. Sources close to the couple claimed that the first reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by anger. Meghan reportedly demanded to speak with William directly, seeking answers, seeking explanations, seeking some trace of humanity in a decision that had blindsided them. Harry, meanwhile, was caught between fury and desperation. How could the man who once promised to protect him, who once shared the burdens of royal life, now wield such power against his own family? And yet, as shocking as the decree itself was, the timing made it even more dramatic. Palace insiders suggest that this move was not spontaneous. Weeks of planning had gone into it, carefully orchestrated to coincide with other events in the royal calendar. Some speculate it was designed to assert William's authority in the face of rising media speculation about the Sussexes' future plans. Others suggest it was a preemptive strike, meant to neutralize any perceived challenge to the hierarchy of succession. The ripple effect. Every decision was weighed against public perception, potential backlash, and long-term consequences for the monarchy. In the midst of all this, a startling contradiction emerged. Some advisors reportedly warned that stripping the titles could backfire, creating public sympathy for Harry and Meghan, painting William as overly harsh or controlling. Others argued that inaction would be worse, allowing rumors, speculation, and perceived threats to hierarchy to grow unchecked. The tension between maintaining authority and managing emotion became a central theme in the unfolding drama, highlighting the delicate balance of power within the royal family. And then came the first signs of defiance. While the decree was intended to close a chapter, insiders say Harry and Meghan quietly began strategizing, exploring ways to assert their own narrative, protect their children's interests, and challenge the public perception that they were powerless in the face of William's authority. Every move, every decision, was laden with emotional weight, and every step forward risked escalating the conflict. The decree, intended as a decisive measure, thus became a catalyst. It revealed fissures in family dynamics that had long existed beneath the polished exterior of royal life. It exposed vulnerabilities, highlighted loyalties and betrayals, and set the stage for a confrontation that was as much about personal identity as it was about titles and tradition. For Archie and Lilibet, the decree marked a turning point in their young lives, altering how they would perceive themselves and how the world would perceive them. And as the day drew on, another complication arose. Palace insiders reported that the timing of the public announcement coincided with a flurry of international attention, including media coverage in the United States, Europe, and beyond. Harry and Meghan's supporters rallied online, creating a storm of commentary that added pressure on the royal household. The palace, in turn, faced the challenge of managing both internal emotions and external scrutiny, a balancing act that threatened to spiral out of control with each passing hour. So, the decree did more than strip titles. It laid bare the complexities of a modern monarchy, where tradition, public expectation, and personal relationships collide in unpredictable ways. It forced parents, siblings, and advisors alike to navigate a labyrinth of emotion, duty, and strategy, all under the relentless gaze of the public eye. And while the formal letter may have been brief, its consequences were vast, reverberating through private conversations, media coverage, and the lives of the children at its center. Imagine hearing news that hits like a thunderclap in the middle of a quiet morning. Prince Harry, pacing in his private residence, could barely process the words he had just read. Meghan, equally stunned, had leaned against the hallway wall, gripping her phone as though it could somehow reverse the decree that stripped their children of their royal titles. The atmosphere was thick with disbelief, anger, and a tension so palpable it could almost be felt through the walls. How could William, his older brother, do this? And why, without a word of warning, make such a decision that reached straight to the heart of their family? The first moments were a blur. Sources close to the couple describe a series of rapid-fire phone calls, whispered consultations, and frantic messaging with close allies. The reality was sinking in. This was not a rumor. It was not a misunderstanding. Archie and Lilibet's titles were gone, and with them, Harry and Meghan felt an emotional blow that went beyond protocol or tradition. It was personal. Meghan, ever the strategist in public life, reportedly shifted immediately into protective mode. She gathered herself, pacing back and forth in their residence, formulating what she would later describe as a plan of action to shield her children from the fallout. She knew that the world would be watching, that media outlets would seize every detail, every emotion, every misstep. And she knew that Harry, for all his poise, was vulnerable, raw, and needing a voice to echo his frustration and disbelief. Harry, on the other hand, struggled with a storm of conflicting emotions. The eldest of the two brothers, William, had once been his confidant, his partner in navigating the pressures of royal life. Yet now, that trust felt fractured, even shattered. Sources say he alternated between searing anger at what he saw as betrayal and desperate attempts to understand the reasoning behind William's unprecedented move. Every thought seemed to collide with the next, protecting the children, confronting his brother, managing public perception, and grappling with the historical weight of the monarchy. And then there was the private moment that insiders describe as almost cinematic. Meghan sitting with Archie, trying to explain that while he may no longer be a prince officially, he would always be their son, their center, their world. Lilibet, just a toddler, was soothed in Meghan's arms, unaware of the magnitude of the news, yet feeling the tension in the room. These were not just headlines. These were children's lives, their sense of identity. And then there was the private moment that insiders describe as almost cinematic. Meghan sitting with Archie, trying to explain that while he may no longer be a prince officially, he would always be their son, their center, their world. Lilibet, just a toddler, was soothed in Meghan's arms, unaware of the magnitude of the news, yet feeling the tension in the room. These were not just headlines. These were children's lives, their sense of identity, and the emotional security of their family, all suddenly thrust into chaos. Harry reportedly took a step back, trying to process the emotional terrain. He was a parent first, a prince second. But the two roles collided violently in that moment. He had to balance protecting his children with the reality of William's authority. How do you fight a family member when that fight could reverberate through centuries of tradition? How do you respond when your very identity as a parent is entangled with public perception, royal protocol, and media scrutiny? Sources suggest that Meghan's initial response was sharper, more immediate. She reached out to allies, friends, and media strategists, seeking advice and trying to understand the full implications. Was this purely a ceremonial decision, or were there broader consequences for succession, for public appearances, for legal rights within the monarchy? Every question raised more questions, and every answer seemed to deepen the sense of shock. Meanwhile, Harry, though more introspective, was not passive. Insiders describe him as pacing in frustration, making urgent calls, and attempting to reach William directly. The goal, he reportedly told aides, was clarity, understanding, and if possible, a reversal or mitigation of the decree. But every call, every attempt, seemed to be met with calm, calculated responses from William's team, a silence that only intensified the tension. Public speculation began almost immediately. Social media exploded with commentary on the feud, the implications for the monarchy, and the emotional toll on the children. Was this sibling rivalry? A calculated political move? Or something far deeper, rooted in long-standing resentments and differences in philosophy between the brothers? For Harry and Meghan, The media storm only amplified the sense of urgency. Every leaked detail, every headline, every viral post was a reminder that their private family crisis had become a global spectacle. The emotional weight, insiders say, was particularly intense because Harry and Meghan had long been conscious of media scrutiny and public perception. They knew how quickly stories could spiral, how easily narratives could be shaped without their input, and how relentless the press could be. Now, with this decree, the stakes had multiplied exponentially. This was no longer just a family dispute. It was a global conversation about identity, power, and parental authority. And yet, the couple reportedly tried to maintain composure in front of their children. Meghan, in particular, focused on creating a sense of normalcy, explaining to Archie and Lilibet that titles, while meaningful, did not define their worth, their value, or the love they received. Harry, while inwardly seething, reinforced that message, ensuring that their children understood they were still part of a loving, protective unit. The emotional choreography of the day, however, was exhausting, as every conversation, every reassurance, carried the undercurrent of shock and frustration. Insiders describe a turning point later in the day when Harry received what they describe as a cryptic message from a senior palace figure, a communication that was intended to clarify the decree but instead added layers of confusion and frustration. The tone, sources say, was formal, almost dismissive, highlighting protocol and tradition without acknowledging the human consequences. For Harry and Meghan, it was a stark reminder of how detached the machinery of royalty could feel from personal reality. By evening, the couple reportedly convened with their closest advisors to assess next steps. The discussions, sources say, were intense, emotional, and strategic. How should they respond publicly? Privately? Could the decision be challenged legally? Should they issue statements, remain silent, or control the narrative in other ways? Every option carried risk, and the pressure to act quickly collided with the need for careful consideration. Amid all this, there was also a personal betrayal that haunted Harry and Meghan. While William's authority was clear, the lack of prior communication, the unilateral nature of the decision, and the public framing of the decree as a matter of tradition left Harry and Meghan feeling blindsided and undermined. Sources describe long moments of reflection, of anger simmering in private, and of questions about loyalty, family bonds, and trust that now seemed fragile. As the night drew on, both Harry and Meghan reportedly acknowledged that the story was no longer just about titles. It had become about identity, agency, and the future of their family under a microscope of public scrutiny. Their shock, though intense at the outset, evolved into a kind of focused determination to protect their children, assert their narrative, and navigate a complex, emotionally charged family dynamic that had suddenly become impossible to ignore. And yet, even in these moments of strategic clarity, the couple faced another layer of complication. Reports suggest that key figures within the palace had begun leaking details to select media outlets, shaping a narrative that subtly favored William's position. Every leak, every story, every calculated headline added pressure, uncertainty, and emotional strain to Harry and Meghan's already fraught response. Questions remain. How far will Harry go to protect his children? Will Meghan's fierce advocacy prevail? And can a family, already divided by duty, tradition, and public expectation, find a path forward when trust has been compromised in such a dramatic and personal way? What drives siblings to clash so violently, even when history, blood, and public expectation demand unity? In the case of Prince William and Prince Harry, the answer is far from simple. Their story is one of shared experiences and shared burdens. Childhoods framed by global attention, parental loss, and the relentless glare of the media. Yet beneath that shared history lies a web of tension, rivalry, and unspoken resentment that, insiders say, has been simmering for decades. And now, the stripping of Archie and Lilibet's titles brought that tension to the surface in the most dramatic way possible. From the outside, William and Harry appear to have been the closest of brothers. They shared toys, bedrooms, and even the weight of royal duty from an early age. But growing up in the shadow of expectation can forge fissures that remain invisible until the right spark ignites them. Sources claim that Harry has long felt a sense of being overshadowed, of being constantly compared, of living in the shadow of a brother who is both elder and heir. William, for his part, is said to have internalized the need to uphold tradition, maintain hierarchy, and ensure the monarchy remains unthreatened. These differing perspectives created a tension that was always present, even if not always visible. The decision to strip Archie and Lilibet of their titles, insiders say, was the culmination of that tension. For William, it was a matter of asserting authority, reinforcing boundaries, and protecting the monarchy's perceived integrity. For Harry, it felt like a personal attack, not just on him, but on the children he loves more than anything in the world. The two perspectives, rooted in vastly different interpretations of duty, love, and family loyalty, collided violently in private. Sources recount private conversations in which William expressed a calm, almost clinical rationale. The titles, he reportedly argued, could create confusion in the line of succession, complicate ceremonial expectations, and even set precedents that the monarchy could ill afford. Harry, meanwhile, reacted emotionally, pointing out that this was not just about protocol. This was about children, their identities, and their connection to a family that now seemed fractured. The clash, insiders say, was immediate and intense, the emotional stakes as high as the historical ones. Yet there is another layer to this rivalry that the public rarely sees. According to palace insiders, William has long been wary of Harry and Meghan's influence, both within the family and in the public sphere. Their willingness to speak out, to challenge traditional protocols, and to carve an independent path has been a source of frustration for William, who views stability and continuity as paramount. The decree, in this context, was as much about family dynamics as it was about the monarchy, a demonstration of authority, a reassertion of hierarchy, and a clear signal that boundaries would not be crossed. And Harry, of course, did not take this lightly. Friends close to him describe a mix of disbelief, hurt, and determination. He reportedly questioned how his brother could make such a decision unilaterally, how the emotional impact on the children seemed to have been considered only in passing, and how family loyalty could be weighed against protocol in such a cold, calculated manner. The clash between familial love and institutional duty became the emotional core of their conflict, a struggle that insiders say has defined much of their adult relationship. Adding fuel to the fire, the media quickly picked up on whispers of long-standing tension. Analysts and commentators speculated that the stripping of titles was not merely about ceremonial concerns, but a manifestation of deeper sibling rivalry. Some argued that Harry's choice to step back from royal duties and live abroad had created a rift that William felt compelled to address. Others suggested that William's actions were preemptive, anticipating future public statements or appearances that could further complicate the monarchy's image. The public debate only intensified the emotional pressure on both brothers. Inside the family, the tension reportedly spilled into private conversations, dinners, and even family meetings. Sources suggest that other members of the royal household tried to mediate, to calm tempers, and to encourage dialogue, but the deep-seated rivalry proved resistant to resolution. Every interaction became a negotiation, every word carefully chosen, and every gesture analyzed for hidden meaning. In such a charged atmosphere, the simplest exchange could ignite a flare-up, and the stripping of the children's titles acted as the ultimate spark. The emotional stakes for Harry were particularly high. Friends report that he felt a profound sense of betrayal, not just as a brother, but as a father. This was not just about protocol or tradition. This was about protecting his children from what he perceived as an unnecessary, even cruel, upheaval. Meghan, observing the tension, reportedly encouraged him to channel his frustration into strategic action rather than confrontation, recognizing that the emotional intensity of the moment could cloud judgment. Meanwhile, William, according to insiders, believed he was acting in the best interest of the monarchy and, by extension, the family. His demeanor, described as calm and measured, contrasted sharply with the emotional intensity radiating from Harry and Meghan. This contrast, sources say, further inflamed tensions, as the perceived emotional detachment was interpreted by Harry as a lack of empathy or understanding. The clash of emotional and rational approaches created a dynamic that was both dramatic and deeply personal. And yet, the sibling rivalry was not one-sided. Observers note that Harry has long been outspoken, independent, and willing to challenge established norms, traits that William reportedly views as both admirable and problematic. The stripping of titles, then, can be seen as an attempt to reassert traditional order in the face of perceived disruption. From William's perspective, authority must be maintained. From Harry's perspective, love and protection must prevail. The resulting conflict is a dramatic collision of values, priorities, and emotional truths. But there is another, more subtle layer to consider: the role of perception. William's actions, framed publicly as adherence to tradition, were designed to maintain a narrative of stability and continuity. Harry and Meghan, meanwhile, had cultivated a public persona of independence, modernity, and advocacy. The stripping of titles not only created a personal conflict, but also a public narrative battle, with each side aware that every word, every expression, and every statement could be scrutinized globally. Sources suggest that in the hours following the decree, Harry and Meghan debated how to respond, both privately and publicly. Should they challenge the decision openly, or work quietly behind the scenes? How should they communicate with the children, the media, and the broader public? Every choice carried emotional weight and strategic consequences. The siblings' relationship, already strained, became a focal point for these decisions, with Harry grappling with anger, betrayal, and the instinct to defend his children at all costs. And then, there's the historical context. Sibling rivalry in royal families is hardly new. The annals of monarchy are filled with stories of brothers clashing over succession, influence, and power. But in the modern era, with global media, social platforms, and a public invested in every detail, these conflicts play out on an unprecedented scale. William and Harry's feud, though deeply personal, also serves as a lens through which the world examines the pressures, contradictions, and emotional tolls of royal life. As night fell on that fateful day, the palace remained tense. Private conversations, strategic planning sessions, and whispered debates continued late into the evening. Every participant understood that the stripping of Archie and Lilibet's titles was not just an isolated event, but the spark that could ignite a larger, long-term conflict between the brothers. The emotional landscape was fraught with betrayal, frustration, and a desperate desire for understanding, elements that insiders say have defined this relationship for years. And yet, despite the intensity of the moment, both brothers were acutely aware of the stakes. Any misstep could be magnified globally, every action dissected, every word scrutinized. This awareness only heightened the tension, creating a delicate balance between emotional expression and strategic caution. Every phone call, every message, every private meeting became a high-stakes negotiation in a game where family loyalty, public perception, and historical legacy intersected. So, as the night deepened and the initial shock began to settle, one thing was clear: this was far more than a disagreement over protocol. It was a confrontation rooted in decades of shared history, contrasting philosophies, and the complex dynamics of a family living in the public eye. The stripping of Archie and Lilibet's titles was merely the trigger, igniting emotions and revealing fissures that had long existed beneath the polished surface of royal life. When news broke that Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana had been stripped of their royal titles, the world reacted instantly. Social media erupted. Headlines screamed. Comment sections flooded with speculation, outrage, and opinion. What had once been a private family matter suddenly became a global spectacle, with millions weighing in on a decision that, until that moment, most of the world assumed only affected the royal family internally. But now, every eye was on Harry, Meghan, William, and, most poignantly, the children caught in the middle. Twitter exploded first, as is always the case. Hashtags like hashtag Archie and Lilibet, hashtag royal title stripped, and hashtag Sussex shock trended worldwide within hours. Some posts were sympathetic, empathizing with the children and their parents. Others defended William, citing the monarchy's need for tradition and stability. Debates spilled across platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, even YouTube, creating a storm of discourse that intensified by the minute. Millions were expressing opinions about a family feud thousands of miles away, about children who barely understood the weight of their names. Commentators, Pundits and royal experts were called upon to interpret every angle. Live television debates ran for hours, dissecting the move, analyzing body language, and speculating on the motivations behind William's decree. Was this a necessary measure to protect the monarchy? One anchor asked. Or was this a personal vendetta disguised as protocol? Another countered. Social media influencers and YouTube creators produced videos that quickly went viral, each one offering a unique interpretation, whether humorous, dramatic, or emotionally charged. The narrative, already explosive, was now uncontrollable. The public's reaction was not uniform. In the UK, reactions were divided. Some hailed William's decision as decisive and necessary, praising his commitment to preserving the monarchy's integrity. Others condemned it as cruel, arguing that stripping young children of their titles was emotionally damaging and unfair. In the United States, the response skewed heavily sympathetic toward Harry and Meghan. Many Americans framed the story as a tale of a modern family under siege, emphasizing the emotional impact on the children and the perceived coldness of William's decision. But it wasn't just social media and punditry. Newspapers around the world ran front-page stories with images of Archie and Lilibet alongside headlines designed to provoke curiosity and stir emotion. Some papers portrayed the children as victims of palace politics, while others focused on the historical precedent, analyzing how previous monarchs dealt with issues of titles, succession, and family conflict. Every story, every angle, added fuel to the fire, and each new report generated thousands of comments, shares, and reactions. And then there were the memes, a modern phenomenon that no royal event escapes. Memes ranged from humorous takes on the stripping of titles to biting commentary about sibling rivalry and family politics. Some went viral within hours, creating an entirely new layer of public conversation that was impossible to ignore. These memes were not just entertainment. They shaped perception, framed debate, and amplified the emotional stakes of the unfolding drama. Amid the online storm, the palace faced a dilemma: how to manage public perception without escalating tension. Official statements were released, emphasizing tradition, duty, and continuity. But these statements, while carefully worded, could not control the narrative. In a world where social media dominates public discourse, the voices of commentators, influencers, and ordinary citizens often drown out official messaging. The palace's attempts to frame the story in formal terms collided with an emotional, global conversation fueled by outrage, empathy, and fascination. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan watched as public opinion swirled around them. Sources say that the couple was both heartened by the outpouring of support and alarmed by the intensity of scrutiny. Every news clip, every article, every viral post felt like a reminder that this was no longer a private family conflict. It was now a global spectacle, with millions interpreting every gesture, every statement, and every emotional response. For Harry and Meghan, managing their own emotions while navigating public perception became an urgent priority. And the reaction wasn't confined to adults. Children, teens, and young adults online engaged with the story in ways that added layers of complexity. Some created fan pages supporting Archie and Lilibet. Others debated the fairness of the decision, framing it in moral and ethical terms. The story, already rich with emotional and familial complexity, became a conversation about justice, empathy, and parental love. The public was not just observing. They were actively participating, shaping the narrative as it unfolded in real time. Celebrities weighed in, too. Statements ranged from sympathetic social media posts to more pointed commentary about family, loyalty, and power. Each celebrity opinion added momentum, influencing public sentiment and magnifying the emotional intensity. Some voices expressed outrage at William's perceived coldness. Others framed the situation as a cautionary tale about power and responsibility within any family, even one as globally visible as the British royals. And then came the international angle. Media outlets in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America quickly picked up the story, translating headlines, analyzing the decision, and connecting it to local historical or cultural contexts. In some countries, the stripping of titles was portrayed as a cautionary tale of family hierarchy. In others, it was framed as a global story of emotional trauma and the challenges of navigating public life under extreme scrutiny. The reach and scope of the story demonstrated that monarchy, even centuries old, remains intensely relevant and intensely fascinating on a worldwide stage. In the midst of this public frenzy, the children's voices remained absent, and intentionally so. Harry and Meghan reportedly focused on shielding Archie and Lilibet from media attention, aware that public exposure could compound emotional harm. The couple's strategy, insiders say, involved carefully managing appearances, limiting interactions with reporters, and framing responses in ways that prioritized their children's well-being over immediate public reaction. But even with careful planning, the sheer intensity of global attention made complete protection nearly impossible. As the debate raged online, social media platforms became arenas of emotional conflict. Supporters of Harry and Meghan clashed with supporters of William. Royal historians provided commentary that often conflicted with one another. Every tweet, every post, every video became a microcosm of the larger conversation, a reflection of a family conflict amplified by the digital age. The public, knowingly or unknowingly, was participating in a story that, only days earlier, had been private. Insiders suggest that the intensity of the public reaction surprised even the palace. The volume of commentary, the speed of global dissemination, and the emotional investment of millions of people created an environment of pressure and unpredictability. Every statement from Harry and Meghan, every press briefing from the palace, was scrutinized, dissected, and debated. The reaction revealed the double-edged nature of public life for royals. Global fascination can be both protective and destructive, validating and punishing, illuminating and invasive. And yet, the public reaction also revealed a deeper truth about human nature. Stories of family conflict, identity, and perceived injustice resonate universally. The stripping of titles, while specific to a royal context, tapped into emotions everyone can understand: parental protection, sibling rivalry, betrayal, and the desire for fairness. It was both intensely personal and profoundly relatable, which is why the story spread with such speed and intensity. By the end of the first 24 hours, the situation had escalated into a full-blown media phenomenon. The palace faced a delicate balancing act, maintaining authority, managing internal family dynamics, and controlling the narrative in a world where information moves faster than any official statement. Harry and Meghan, meanwhile, had to navigate the dual pressures of protecting their children and engaging with a public that was both supportive and demanding. The global reaction, in short, transformed the stripping of titles from a private familial decree into a story with universal stakes. It was a story about power, love, identity, and perception, a story that captivated millions and refused to leave the public consciousness. And yet, insiders hint, this was only the beginning. The media coverage, the debates, the viral commentary, they were just the first layer of a conflict that would continue to evolve, revealing deeper, more shocking truths behind the scenes. In the aftermath of the decree, one of the most critical questions for Harry and Meghan became, who could they trust? The royal family is a labyrinth of tradition, protocol, and politics, and navigating it requires allies, people who can advise, protect, and sometimes shield from the harshest realities. For Harry and Meghan, the stripping of Archie and Lilibet's titles was not just a blow to their family's public image. It was a crisis demanding strategic guidance, emotional support, and careful calculation. The first allies came from within their immediate inner circle. Trusted advisors, longtime friends, and select members of staff rallied quickly. They offered counsel on everything from media management to legal options, from family negotiations to emotional support for the children. Each conversation, insiders say, carried urgency. Every word mattered because one misstep could be magnified globally, turning private deliberation into a public spectacle. Meghan, in particular, reportedly leaned heavily on her team. Advisors with experience in public relations, crisis management, and international communications were summoned. Together, they began drafting statements, planning controlled media engagements, and developing messaging that would protect the family while asserting the Sussexes narrative. Sources describe an almost militarized operation. Every tweet, every press release, and every interview was scrutinized for tone, timing, and potential impact. Harry, while deeply emotional, reportedly relied on a slightly different approach. His focus was intensely personal: how to navigate the emotional fallout for his children, how to respond to William in private, and how to protect his family from further harm. Friends describe him pacing late into the night, making calls to former aides, legal advisors, and even international contacts who had experience managing sensitive family matters under intense scrutiny. His determination was fueled by a mix of parental instinct and outrage at what he perceived as a betrayal by his brother. And yet, the allies themselves were not without their dilemmas. Advising Harry and Meghan meant balancing loyalty to the couple with awareness of public perception, palace protocols, and the potential for escalation. Every strategy had to weigh the emotional, legal, and political consequences. Insiders described tense strategy sessions where every possible outcome was debated. Should they respond immediately or wait? Should they go public or maintain privacy? Should they issue a statement through traditional media, social platforms, or controlled interviews? The pressure was enormous. Beyond immediate advisors, the couple also relied on more unconventional allies. Friends from the entertainment industry, international figures, and high-profile supporters offered guidance, advocacy, and sometimes a platform to shape the narrative. Meghan, drawing on her global experience, reportedly tapped into networks that could amplify their message and provide insight into managing public outrage. Harry, meanwhile, leaned on old confidants from his military and charitable work, people who understood discipline, strategy, and the importance of timing in high-stakes situations. Interestingly, insiders say that some allies were divided. While most were wholly supportive of protecting the children and advocating for fairness, a few warned against confrontation with William. They emphasized the importance of measured responses, patience, and strategic diplomacy. These voices, though fewer in number, introduced tension into decision-making. Every choice had the potential to either calm the storm or ignite a new fire, and balancing emotional impulse with strategic restraint became a constant challenge. Legal advisors also entered the picture. While the stripping of titles was framed as a royal prerogative, experts reportedly explored every possible avenue for challenge or negotiation. Could there be legal recourse? Could the decree be contested in any forum, domestic or international? Sources claim that these discussions were meticulous, weighing precedent, protocol, and the potential for public scrutiny. Even in a family as public as the royals, the legal dimension is rarely straightforward, and every option carried risks as well as potential rewards. Among these advisors, emotional support was paramount. Meghan reportedly organized sessions with child psychologists and counselors to help the children process the upheaval. Harry, recognizing the intensity of public attention, sought guidance on media strategy that would shield his family while maintaining dignity and control. The combination of emotional, strategic, and legal guidance became the backbone of their immediate response. But allies were not limited to formal advisors. Friends and confidants outside the palace walls played a crucial role in managing morale. Late-night phone calls, private messages, and discreet meetings provided a buffer against isolation, reminding Harry and Meghan that they were not alone. These allies offered perspective, encouragement, and, in some cases, blunt honesty, the kind that insiders say was necessary to navigate such an unprecedented family crisis. Interestingly, some allies reportedly served dual roles: mediators between the Sussexes and the palace. Trusted figures who had connections to both households were approached in attempts to de-escalate tension. These intermediaries carried sensitive messages, gauged reactions, and sometimes attempted to negotiate softer language or concessions behind the scenes. Their existence underscores the complexity of this conflict. It is at once deeply personal and intensely institutional, a collision of family, monarchy, and global perception. And yet, despite the network of advisors and allies, moments of doubt and frustration were inevitable. Harry reportedly questioned whether any intervention could truly change William's mind. Meghan, equally determined, grappled with the tension between advocacy and overexposure. The intensity of public scrutiny, the emotional weight of protecting children, and the urgency of responding to a sibling's actions created an almost unbearable pressure cooker. Every decision carried long-term consequences, not just for the family, but for the global image of the monarchy itself. Meanwhile, the advisors themselves faced scrutiny. Leaks, intentional or otherwise, began surfacing, creating uncertainty about which strategies were being observed and potentially manipulated. Harry and Meghan's team had to operate with an awareness that every move could be amplified, misinterpreted, or weaponized. The very presence of allies, meant to support and protect, became another layer of complexity in the intricate dance of strategy, loyalty, and public perception. Amid these challenges, moments of clarity emerged. Advisors and allies helped Harry and Meghan craft messages emphasizing love, protection, and family unity. They helped draft communications that focused not on retaliation but on reassurance, for the children, for supporters, and for a public desperate for clarity. Every word, every carefully constructed statement, was a product of both emotional intuition and strategic calculation. Sources also hint at a surprising layer of international advisory input. Individuals with experience in diplomacy, media relations, and global advocacy reportedly offered guidance on framing the story beyond the UK, helping Harry and Meghan understand how international audiences would interpret and respond to their actions. The global dimension, in other words, became an integral part of their decision-making process, reflecting a modern reality where family disputes are immediately amplified across continents. And yet, even with all the advice, all the strategizing, and all the support, Harry and Meghan faced an uncomfortable truth. Allies could only do so much. The core challenge, confronting William, protecting their children, and navigating the emotional landscape, remained theirs alone. No amount of guidance could replace the personal decisions, emotional courage, and strategic choices that lay ahead. As the sun rose the next morning, the Sussexes reportedly regrouped with their inner circle, preparing for another round of media attention, internal palace communication, and private family negotiation. Every step was measured, every word weighed, and every strategy considered against the unpredictable reactions of the public, the media, and the palace itself. But just when it seemed they had a semblance of control, an unexpected leak, a whisper of private correspondence, threatened to undo weeks of careful planning. The identity of the leaker was unknown, the content explosive, and the timing perfect to escalate the crisis. If you thought the public reaction was intense, you haven't yet seen the full force of the media storm that hit Harry and Meghan in the hours and days following William's decree. News outlets around the globe were in overdrive, hungry for every detail, every reaction, every hint of drama. And in a world obsessed with royal intrigue, the story of Archie and Lilibet's stripped titles became a lightning rod for speculation, analysis, and controversy. From the moment the news broke, the media's approach was relentless. Headlines were sensational, designed to grab attention within seconds. Papers ran phrases like royal shockwaves, prince and princess stripped, and family feud escalates across front pages. Online articles were peppered with teasers, promising exclusive insights, unnamed sources, and what really happened behind palace doors. Television news programs dedicated hour-long segments, dissecting statements, analyzing reactions, and speculating on the emotional fallout for the children. Every channel, every platform, wanted to be the first to provide a definitive narrative, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Social media amplified this frenzy exponentially. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became battlegrounds for public opinion, with users dissecting every photograph, video, and soundbite. Memes exploded, framing the children, the brothers, and Meghan in ways that ranged from humorous to scathing. Some were lighthearted, poking fun at perceived tensions, while others were cutting, emphasizing perceived injustice or favoritism. The viral nature of social media created a feedback loop. As more people reacted, the story grew, prompting even more coverage, analysis, and speculation. The media storm was not just about volume, it was about framing. Outlets chose angles that reflected their audiences and editorial priorities. Some portrayed William as decisive and principled, acting to preserve royal tradition. Others painted Harry and Meghan as sympathetic figures, defending their children against an unyielding system. Headlines, images, and video edits were curated to evoke emotion, create suspense, and drive engagement. The result was a worldwide narrative war, unfolding simultaneously across multiple platforms and time zones. Insiders report that Harry and Meghan monitored this storm constantly. Each new headline, each viral post, each trending hashtag was dissected in private discussions with their advisors. They tracked how stories were shaping public perception, who was supporting them, and who was criticizing. Every tweet, every article, every news segment was a data point in an increasingly complex strategy to protect their children, manage their image, and navigate the global reaction. Media outlets also dug deep into the family's history, seeking context for the decision. Analysts revisited previous royal disputes, comparing Harry and William to historical figures, examining patterns of sibling rivalry, inheritance, and succession. Documentaries and special reports delved into decades of family dynamics, childhood anecdotes, and past media controversies. Every broadcast, every analysis, every deep dive added layers to the story, increasing both public interest and emotional intensity. The storm also created new pressures on Harry and Meghan's response strategy. Each day brought new headlines that demanded attention, clarification, or counter-narratives. Sources described tense strategy sessions in which the couple and their advisors debated when and how to respond. Should they issue statements? Should they hold interviews? Could silence be powerful, or would it be perceived as weakness? Every choice was fraught with potential consequences. And then there were leaks, those quiet, strategic hints dropped by palace insiders, media contacts, or unnamed sources. Some leaks seemed designed to provoke Harry and Meghan, others to control the narrative in favor of William. The content ranged from personal letters to private communications to subtle suggestions of internal conflict. For Harry and Meghan, every leak was a puzzle, a potential threat, and a test of their ability to navigate the media landscape without inflaming tensions further. The psychological toll of this constant coverage cannot be overstated. Sources close to the couple described nights spent reading articles, reviewing broadcasts, and analyzing online commentary, only to wake to a new wave of reports. Emotional resilience was tested daily. Harry reportedly oscillated between anger, frustration, and protective determination. Meghan, equally resilient, focused on maintaining composure while guiding the children and coordinating strategy. Together, they faced a media machine that seemed to operate 24/7, impervious to emotion or privacy. The media storm also had unintended consequences. While it elevated global awareness of the conflict, it intensified the emotional strain on the children. Photographs, video clips, and commentary, even when not directly involving Archie or Lilibet, created an environment of exposure and scrutiny. Sources say that Harry and Meghan worked tirelessly to shield them, emphasizing normalcy and love amidst a whirlwind of public speculation. Every precaution, however, seemed fragile against the relentless curiosity of a global audience. Interestingly, the storm wasn't confined to traditional outlets. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and independent journalists seized the story, offering commentary, analysis, and even conspiratorial theories. Some presented themselves as investigative reporters, promising hidden truths behind palace doors. Others framed the story emotionally, emphasizing the children's perspective or the personal stakes for Harry and Meghan. The diversity of coverage meant that no single narrative dominated. Instead, the story fractured into hundreds, each with its own emotional and informational spin. This fractured narrative created challenges for allies and advisors, who struggled to provide consistent guidance amidst rapidly evolving public perception. Messaging had to be precise, adaptable, and credible. Every engagement with the media, whether an interview, social post, or official statement, required careful calibration. Sources suggest that advisors maintained around-the-clock monitoring of coverage, prepared to respond or pivot at a moment's notice. And yet, expectations, the emotional reckonings yet to occur, remain hidden. There are calls that have not been returned, meetings that have yet to take place, and a series of revelations that insiders suggest could dramatically shift the narrative once again. So, what exactly drove Prince William to take such an unprecedented step? Was it a protective measure, an assertion of authority, or something far more calculated? And how will Harry and Meghan respond? Not just as public figures, but as parents watching their children's identities shift in real time. The answers, sources say, are more shocking than the initial announcement itself. And then there's the public lens. Already, online discussions have turned into debates, hashtags are trending, and YouTube commentators are dissecting every possible angle. Some argue that William acted in the interest of monarchy stability, while others see a family feud spilling into public view in a way that could damage the institution irreparably. The world is watching, and every word, every gesture, every leaked statement matters. By now, the scene is set. Archie and Lilibet have lost their titles. Harry and Meghan are reeling. The media is aflame, and the public is captivated. But this is only the beginning. The layers of family tension, palace politics, and emotional complexity have only just begun to unravel. Behind every headline, there is a story untold, a secret conversation, a strategic maneuver, a deeply personal reaction that will shape the trajectory of the royal family for years to come. And so we ask you, what would you do if the world suddenly told you who you were not allowed to be? How would you protect your children, navigate a sibling feud, and maintain a public image under scrutiny from millions? These are the questions Harry and Meghan are facing right now, in real time, and the answers may shock you. Imagine receiving a letter that instantly changes the future of your children. No warning, no discussion, just a statement of fact that the titles your children were born with, titles that link them to centuries of history, are gone. That is what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reportedly faced in the hours following Prince William's unprecedented decree. But how could a single decision carry such weight? And why would William, the elder brother, take a step so severe against his own nephews and niece? The decree, sources say, was drafted with precision, leaving no room for negotiation. Officially, it was a statement of royal protocol, emphasizing the continuity and dignity of the monarchy. Unofficially, it was a bombshell detonating through the private lives of Harry, Meghan, and their children. Every word in that letter was calculated, every phrasing choice deliberate. The palace, insiders claim, wanted to make a statement, one that would be heard not just in London, but around the world. According to palace insiders, the letter arrived late in the morning. Harry, reading it, is said to have sat in stunned silence, the words echoing in his mind. Meghan, learning of the decree moments later, reportedly felt a rush of anger mixed with disbelief. How could this happen without prior discussion? Without a single conversation warning them of the impending action? The couple had anticipated disagreements with William, sure, but nothing that would reach this magnitude. Nothing that would strip their children of their identities so publicly, so decisively. But what exactly did the decree say? According to sources who have reviewed portions of the text, the statement began with formal language, stressing the importance of maintaining the royal lineage and upholding centuries-old traditions. It cited precedent, historical examples, and the role of monarchy in modern society. And then, in the middle of these carefully crafted sentences, came the undeniable truth. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana would no longer hold the titles of prince and princess. The language was clinical, almost cold. There was no empathy, no acknowledgement of the emotional impact on the children or their parents. It was as if the writers intended to make the message feel final and unchallengeable. Harry, according to insiders, felt that sting immediately. This wasn't just a bureaucratic adjustment. It was a declaration, and it came with consequences that would ripple through the family for years to come. Sources close to the couple claim that the first reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by anger. Meghan reportedly demanded to speak with William directly, seeking answers, seeking explanations, seeking some trace of humanity in a decision that had blindsided them. Harry, meanwhile, was caught between fury and desperation. How could the man who once promised to protect him, who once shared the burdens of royal life, now wield such power against his own family? And yet, as shocking as the decree itself was, the timing made it even more dramatic. Palace insiders suggest that this move was not spontaneous. Weeks of planning had gone into it, carefully orchestrated to coincide with other events in the royal calendar. Some speculate it was designed to assert William's authority in the face of rising media speculation about the Sussexes' future plans. Others suggest it was a preemptive strike, meant to neutralize any perceived challenge to the hierarchy of succession. The ripple effect. Every decision was weighed against public perception, potential backlash, and long-term consequences for the monarchy. In the midst of all this, a startling contradiction emerged. Some advisors reportedly warned that stripping the titles could backfire, creating public sympathy for Harry.